We have breaking news. President Trump sending a new warning to Iran as he weighs a range of military strikes that could come as soon as this weekend.
They better negotiate a fair deal.
As Trump is pressuring Iran to make a nuclear deal, the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East in 22 years is on the verge of getting even bigger. The USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group entered the Mediterranean Sea today, putting it closer to striking distance inside of Iran. Out front now, Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congresswoman Dean, is a U.S. military strike on Iran imminent, in your opinion?
I hope not. I truly hope not. Good to be with you, Brianna. And this is not a quiet Friday. And it is not a quiet Friday if you consider the implications from the United States Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 talks about war powers, and the war powers rest within Congress. I'm very worried about the buildup around Iran, the language of our president that is not diplomatic, that is not seeking answers through diplomacy, sanctions, and the required Secretary of State engagement. So I'm very worried about that. Maybe you have seen the joint statement from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Intelligence, and Armed Services Committees. I serve on Appropriations and Foreign Affairs. And the warning is that we strongly, and I join this statement, we strongly oppose preemptive strikes in Iran, that we must focus on diplomacy first, that we must focus on sanctions, and the Constitution is clear. War powers lie within the American people, within Congress, number one, under Article 1. But also the president needs to make the case to the American people. None of that has happened.
I do want to ask you, because during the last strike on Iran, there were Democrats, not many of them, just a couple, but they supported what President Trump did. And then you had a number of other Democrats who supported the policy, but they didn't support how it was done. They also had the war powers objections that you are raising. But knowing that, I mean, is there a possibility with this strike that it could achieve something that actually a number of Democrats might be satisfied with?
The greater risk is the risk to American lives. Look at the massive buildup of military might in the region. The risk is to American lives. Are we supposed to, without any justification from the president, without any coming to Congress, say, sure, put military lives, U.S. military lives at risk of being injured, of losing them? I can't justify that. And the president clearly can't justify that. What dismays me is the failure of the president to adequately use his Department of State. Where is Secretary Rubio in all of this? Why are we always talking about Jared Kushner and Mr. Witkoff? I just returned Wednesday morning from Israel. Again, it is all about others talking about diplomacy or trying to figure out peace and pushing forward in terms of the 20-point plan between Gaza, Palestinian and Israeli peace. Why not go with true diplomacy? Not deal makers, not people who see this as a corporate extension of themselves. Let's go with diplomacy. Let's go with the Constitution. Let's go with advising the American people and asking for the consent of Congress.
Is it clear to you what the objective is here? Is there clarity on that? Because the White House has given several reasons for the attack: to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program, to retaliate after the regime reportedly killed thousands of protesters here recently, to destroy Iran's ballistic missile program, to end Iran's support of proxy forces in the region. Do you have clarity on the objective?
No, we don't. And obviously, and I think you just listed many objectives very, very well. And what we need are the facts and the truth. What the president has said he is upset about, and I share this upset, is the killing of protesters in Iran. He said he was going to be locked and loaded around that issue. And then, of course, Iran says that, no, it's not 30,000 protesters, it's 3,100 protesters. None of that is good. Iran is a bad actor. We know that. But the president needs to do this not in an erratic way, and to identify his mission. Is it about the nuclear program? We have an interest in making sure that Iran does not enrich uranium and develop nuclear weapons. That needs to be absolutely defined and focused. Unfortunately, the president has walked away from that kind of oversight and is not being clear on actually what he is interested in. Is he interested in protecting some sort of an attempt at democracy and protecting protesters who are being slaughtered? It doesn't seem that way. Is this about oil? I don't know. What is the president interested in? The erratic nature that we see. He did a buildup in the area of Venezuela. He went after Greenland in a very absurd way, and now Iran. And all of this, as I said, I just returned from Israel. We don't want to provoke a kinetic war in Iran, in the region, without an understanding of exactly what the mission is and exactly what our partners believe is the best issue.
Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, thank you very much for being with us on such a big day as we see a lot of this military material mobilizing. Thank you. And now I do want to bring in